reactions at the courthouse from some of the people there. I want to go through the details of what happened for those of you that have not followed the Carmelo Anthony case, okay? This is from Fox News, and this is their account today of what happened on that day, okay? At the track meet. At the center of the case was a confrontation that unfolded beneath a Memorial High School team tent during a rainy track meet attended by schools from across North Texas. According to trial testimony, Anthony, a student from a different school, sat beneath the memorial tent shortly before the confrontation began. Several student athletes testified that they questioned why he was there and repeatedly asked him to leave. Okay, so let me stop there before we get into some more details. Obviously, they were right to ask him to leave because Carmelo Anthony was armed and dangerous, and a short time later would murder someone. But, you know, this was I want you to think about this now. Cast your mind back to when you were in high school, and you're at an event for your high school, and some strange kid comes over and sits in the area where it's just other kids from your school at an event like this. Of course that would set off sirens. Of course that would concern people. Of course that would worry people. I'm like, what is he doing here? Why is he here? Why is he sitting here? There's nothing wrong with anything that we've heard so far. These kids going up and, what are you doing here? And asking him to leave, that's appropriate. Witnesses told jurors that Austin Metcalf, that's the victim, eventually approached Anthony and asked him to move. You know, I tell you, just thinking back, I can remember so many times in high school, things like this happened up until the end, where there were confrontations between guys from different groups, different schools, different places. One student testified that Anthony was asked to leave roughly 15 times. Now keep in mind, this was a tent in an area for the students at that school, Memorial High. It wasn't just some community area. Multiple witnesses recalled Anthony responding with statements such as, "Touch me and you'll find out. And if you want me to move, you'll have to move me." So right away, first off, what's he doing there? They don't know it yet, but he's got a deadly weapon in his possession. So why does he have a deadly weapon with him? Why does he have a deadly weapon? Why has he gone into this school's area that he doesn't belong in with a deadly weapon? Right? Why is he doing all these things? And then he's escalated things. You're going to have to move me. He's challenging them. He's egging them on to escalate. Witnesses also repeatedly referenced Anthony keeping one hand inside his backpack during the exchange. Several students testified they believed Anthony was bluffing when he suggested he had something in the bag. The confrontation turned physical moments later. Witnesses gave differing accounts about exactly how Metcalf touched Anthony before the stabbing, with some describing a shove and others describing a grab. Testimony also varied on whether Metcalf used one hand or two. Now, I want you guys to go back. When you were in high school, you mean to tell me that none of you, when you were in high school, saw some guys get into a shoving match or some type of verbal exchange or laying hands or touching one another? Of course. I mean, that's part of school. It's not always the most fun part, but it's part of growing up in middle school and high school. The confrontation turned physical moments later. Witnesses gave differing accounts about exactly how Metcalf, that's the victim, touched Anthony before the stabbing, with some describing a shove and others describing a grab. Testimony also varied on whether Metcalf used one hand or two. Anthony then stabbed Metcalf in the chest, according to the eyewitness testimony in the trial. Oh my goodness. You know, by the way, you got a deadly weapon, right? That's one thing. and he grabbed this deadly, he escalated things, daring them to get physical. Then he grabs the deadly weapon, and he didn't even say, hey, stick back, stay back, don't touch me. He just went for it and stabbed the poor kid to death. Several students said they initially believed Anthony was bluffing. One witness testified that he did not realize Metcalf had been stabbed until he saw Anthony throw an object into the bleachers. Another recalled hearing Metcalf say, "Oh my God." Prosecutors argued that Anthony escalated a verbal disagreement into a deadly encounter by pulling a knife from his backpack and stabbing an unarmed teenager. No doubt. No doubt about it. Is there, now again, maybe you've got a differing opinion. I'd certainly like, you're welcome to call me, and share at 888-465-2631. It's a toll-free call, but I don't see anything other than cold-blooded murder here. And by the way, this has nothing to do with skin color, okay? This isn't OJ. This is just clear-cut murder. And I'll tell you, Carmelo Anthony, if he's walking around with a deadly weapon that he's prepared to use, and he goes and picks a fight, he had something on his mind, okay? This confrontation wasn't a surprise to him. Maybe surprised to the kid that he killed, that he murdered, but it wasn't a surprise to Carmelo Anthony. He went to that tent with a deadly weapon, and he went there to cause some trouble. Prosecutors argued that Anthony escalated a verbal disagreement into a deadly encounter by pulling a knife from his backpack and stabbing an unarmed teenager. Fact. To support that argument, prosecutors called 21 witnesses, and it's unusual. In most murders, there aren't witnesses. The witness is usually the victim, right? But there are a lot of witnesses here, which is very, very unusual in a murder trial. To support that argument, prosecutors called 21 witnesses, including students who witnessed the confrontation, investigators who processed the crime scene, and the medical examiner who performed Metcalf's autopsy. Several student witnesses testified that Anthony was the aggressor, no doubt, and that the stabbing did not appear to be an act of self-defense, without question. This is true. Cold-cut case, murder. One witness testified that no one attempted to gang up on Anthony and described the physical contact before the stabbing as minor pushing at most, which is, again, standard high school behavior among boys. Another witness testified that Anthony appeared to be looking for a fight. No doubt. You look at the cold, hard facts of what happened. He went there to cause some kind of trouble with a deadly weapon. Jurors also heard testimony that Anthony told an officer after the stabbing, "I'm not alleged, I did it. He put his hands on me, I told him not to." So we got an on-the-scene confession, and he's even confessing not only did he murder the kid, but the kid wasn't threatening his life, he just touched him. The medical examiner's testimony was among the most difficult moments of the trial. Metcalf's family left the courtroom while autopsy photographs were shown to the jury and his injuries were described in detail. The defense's case was this. Defense attorneys argued that Anthony acted in self-defense after being confronted by a larger student and physically touched during the dispute. Okay. Now, here in Florida, we now have open carry. I'm a gun owner. I've been a gun owner my entire adult life. If you take any self-defense class, and I've taken many classes over the years for concealed weapon permits, although you don't need a permit anymore in Florida. I even took an advanced course on how to survive a gunfight and how to react when these things happen. In every self-defense course I've ever taken involving my handgun, do you know what the first thing they tell you to do is? What do you think? What is the first thing? If you're a gun owner, that's a deadly weapon. He had a knife. Carmelo Anthony had a knife. But in any self-defense course, any weapons training course that I've ever taken, what do you think the first thing Every instructor over the years, different places and everything, what's the first thing they tell you to do? What's your first line of defense when you're the one with a deadly weapon and you're in danger? You know what it is? Leave if you can. Leave. If you're in a parking lot, get in your car and leave. If you can. If you can walk or run away, walk or run away. Always avoid the confrontation. The weapon is a last resort when your life is going to be in major jeopardy and you cannot escape. Defense attorneys argued that Anthony acted in self-defense after being confronted by a larger student and physically touched during the dispute. It's a very weak defense. Throughout the trial, defense attorneys emphasized that Anthony was seated for much of the confrontation, while Metcalf and other students were standing nearby. Testimony indicated Metcalf outweighed Anthony by roughly 50 to 60 pounds. Defense attorneys also highlighted inconsistencies among witness accounts regarding where students were positioned, how many hands Metcalf used when touching Anthony, and who was standing nearby at the time of the confrontation. Anthony's track coach testified that athletes from different schools routinely mingle at track meets and said his team lacked enough volunteers to set up a tent that day. He acknowledged, however, that students should leave if asked to leave another team's tent. Defense witnesses also pointed to testimony that another student under the tent knew Anthony and greeted him when he arrived. Well, where was he when all this happened? And what was the knife all about? Why did he have a knife? After the prosecution rested its case, defense attorneys moved for a directed verdict, arguing prosecutors had failed to prove their case. The judge denied the motion. Okay. Several teenage witnesses became emotional while recounting the events of the April 2nd, 2025 incident. One testified while holding a football because it helped calm his nerves. Another gripped a yellow stress ball throughout his testimony. That witness, a football player and track athlete, told jurors that his father had recently been murdered in California. He described Metcalf as a football captain and mentor who believed in him. A recent Liberty High School graduate became emotional while recalling seeing Metcalf bleeding after the stabbing. Witnesses repeatedly described Metcalf as a leader, a teammate, and role model. One student testified that Metcalf was always leading and always protecting us. Another recalled Metcalf telling Anthony, "I'm not going to fight you at a track meet." The trial also brought renewed attention to the devastation suffered by the Metcalf family. Austin Metcalf's twin brother, Hunter, witnessed the stabbing and was with Austin in his final moments. Oh, my goodness. Austin Metcalf's father has repeatedly spoken publicly about losing his son. And that goes on and on and on a little bit. It's all a tragedy, mostly for the child that lost their life, right? No doubt about it. But when you look at what happened here, as sad as it is a clear-cut case of murder. Carmelo Anthony, whatever the situation was, whatever was in his mind, whatever he was doing there, whether he had a right to be there, whether he didn't have a right to be there, whether he was invited by a friend who went to the school, all of that is irrelevant. You know, I'm thinking back to all the times I was in school, and you guys think about it, even still to this day. I've never walked around when I was in school with a knife. And in fact, you know, when I was in school, went to school here in Florida, a lot of guys, because here in Florida, you know, you Florida kids, you're fishing, you're doing all kinds of things. It's not unusual for high school boys to have knives for the things that they do, fishing and everything else, but you don't bring them to school. In fact, when I was in school, if you possessed even a pocket knife, because, you know, a lot of young boys, even when you're in elementary school, you walk around with a pocket knife, but you don't bring it to school. When I was in school, it was automatic expulsion to have a knife. Automatic expulsion, right? Because it's a deadly weapon. So why was Carmelo Anthony at a school event with a knife, with a deadly weapon? Who does that? You know, I didn't hear anything about, well, you know, I didn't hear any explanation, by the way, throughout all of this as to why he had a knife. You know, I would have expected to hear, well, you know, he had been involved in some bullying incident. He'd been, you know, he was in fear, so he was carrying it for self-defense. That wouldn't justify it, by the way. You can't have a weapon at a school event. You can't walk around like that. But there was no, from the defense, there was no explanation as to why he was walking around with a knife. Like me and my friends that would fish or something, or maybe you would just have a pocket knife because that's what guys carry around, right? There was no explanation for it. And considering what he did, murder another boy, 17-year-old kid, I could only assume, based on his actions and everything that he did, going into the tent of the other school, refusing to leave, having the knife, pulling the knife, didn't even use the knife and say, hey, get back, just took it out and boom, and used it and killed the kid. I could only assume that he wanted trouble, he was looking for trouble, and that's why he had the knife. But regardless of all of that, it doesn't matter. He did it. Multiple witnesses, he even confessed to the cops that he did it. And when he told the cops, he said, I did it. He put his hands on me. He's not even, he's saying that he did it, committed the murder, stabbed the kid to death, even though his life was not in jeopardy. So the confusion, you know, there's sometimes when there's an incident and, you know, and it's in the news, it's high profile, and there's a racial element like this because the kid that was murdered is white and the murderer is black. But when there's a black and white case like this, sometimes there's conflict. People will have a recording, but the recordings never happen before the incident. People start recording after the spark happens, so you don't have context. But there are incidents that are up for debate. What happened here, right? But not in this case. And, you know, out of all of the high-profile, racially charged cases that I've seen in my time that involve, you know, a murder of any kind, this is the most clear-cut case I've ever seen. And what I've been seeing in front of the courthouse this week and today, people turning it into a racial issue, I just don't get it. Where's the racial conflict here? So let's go to this. Let me play some of the audio. This is in front of the courthouse. Listen to this lady.
What do you want us to do? What do you want us to do? What? I'm lost for it. I don't know what to do.
You know, this is really confusing to me, right? And maybe you're confused, maybe you're not. I don't know, but this is really confusing to me. When she says she doesn't know what to do, because, and this is, by the way, right after the guilty verdict of Carmelo Anthony was read and released, okay? She doesn't know what to do. What is the conflict in her mind? What does she mean she doesn't know what to do? How about tell people, don't walk around with knives, with deadly weapons. Don't go around with that deadly weapon and pick fights. And also, don't take out a deadly weapon and stab someone to death. I mean, that's something you could do.
What do you want us to do? What do you want us to do? What? I'm lost for it. I don't know what to do. I got 5 boys. I don't know what. I ain't got nothing to tell them. They don't away no more.
Trayvon Martin's a totally different story than this. Okay? Trayvon Martin's a completely different story. Trayvon Martin wasn't armed. There were no witnesses. Well, there was one witness, Trayvon Martin, and you know, Zimmerman killed him. Okay. See, the Trayvon Martin case, there's a lot of, I don't want to get sidetracked on that, but see, the Trayvon Martin case is a typical murder case trial, okay? There's no witnesses because the witness didn't survive. They're dead. So when you don't have witnesses or video, if Trayvon Martin would have happened today, that's been a number of years now, there'd probably be cameras all over the apartment complex and we'd see it and things would have been different. But there were a whole bunch of witnesses in this case. Without witnesses, and some really strange other things happen too, but without witnesses, it's a whole nother scenario as opposed to when there are witnesses or video. Okay? So this has nothing to do with the Trayvon Martin case. All right, back to this.
I got 5 boys. I don't know what I ain't got nothing to tell them. You can't walk away from those.
Okay, now, and this lady here, she's really confused. And I really worry, she's got 5 boys. I really worry about her sons. Because what kind of message is she sending to her 5-year-olds, right? And in fact, the messaging that she's giving as a mother to her 5 sons is messaging that could get them in a lot of trouble, because her perception of this situation with Carmelo Anthony is so out of touch. It's like in an alternate universe that she sees things. There is no racial element. I've got news for you. If the races were 100% reversed in this case, 100% reversed, right? If everything was the same, but the skin colors were reversed, what do you think this lady would be saying? I think we know. I think we know. All right, here's Fox News at the scene, at the courthouse, reporting as the verdict is being read.
Got some notes from our local reporter who is inside the courtroom. So when that guilty verdict was read, I'm told that Carmelo Anthony was crying, he was shaking, his defense attorney kept his arm around his shoulders the entire time, and also I'm told that
Now, I want to tell you this, okay? This guy that showed up with the American flag, okay? I don't know who this guy is. Maybe we'll find out, because this is going viral and, he's all over the place. What is the point of that? Who is this guy and why is he doing it? What an idiot. What an idiot. And I question this guy. He's going a little overboard with his patriot portrayal here. I don't know if this guy's for real. What would possess someone? I'm talking about the white guy. What would possess when this is going down, and you've seen all week what's been going on in front of the courthouse, and you know that if a guilty verdict comes down, people down there are going to be plenty pissed, tempers are going to be high. What kind of white man would put on an American flag shirt and go down to a place like this and get confrontational? A psycho, maybe, but maybe a Democrat, fake MAGA, fake Republican. I'm going to call stolen valor on this guy with the American flag. It's too over the top. It's one thing if he went down there to view things, okay? I give you an example. If this was in my town and I decided to go there and film it for my YouTube channel, I probably would not wear my Make America Great Again hat to there. Not because I'm afraid, not because I'm nervous, because I'm a decent person. I'm a gentleman, right? I don't go around looking to cause trouble. And when you go down like this jerk did, with the American flag shirt on, to an incident like this, when the verdict is coming down, you're looking to cause trouble. And this, what this really is what this guy's doing? This is like Antifa activity. I don't know who this guy is. I don't know anything about him other than he's a jerk, for sure. We can agree he's a jerk, right? I mean, we don't need to know any more than what we're seeing. But this guy, this is what Antifa, one of the reasons Antifa wear masks and everything else is so you can't see who they are. And when you see the masks off, a lot of times they're just dorks and geeks, but a lot of times they're old men and women too. And the way that he's facing this guy down without fear, this is total Democrat activist, Antifa-like behavior. It's almost like he feels safe there because he's got some backup to go down there and do something stupid. To do what? That's right, to make conservatives, to make President Trump, to make MAGA look bad. Because if you see a white guy walking around with an American flag shirt on like this, you probably think, for good reason, that he's a Republican, that he's MAGA. But he's a jerk. And let me tell you something, if this guy's MAGA, we should excommunicate him from our movement. I don't want stupid people like this in the MAGA. When you're MAGA, and this is a very important thing, I haven't talked about this in a while, okay? I wear my MAGA stuff all the time, whether it's a Make America Great Again hat, a Trump 2028 hat, or a shirt. I am always on my very best behavior and then some. I'm always a nice guy and a gentleman, but I am extra nice when I'm wearing. You know why? Because when you're wearing MAGA gear, you're representing President Trump. And anything you do that's negative is a reflection on him. So no, I question this guy. And he's getting too much press on top of it. All right, back to it. See, this guy is way too calm, isn't he? Way too calm with all this craziness going on. No, that guy, that looks like a setup to me. Yeah, I mean, it's a sad thing, but I'll tell you this. I think Carmelo Anthony should get life. I really do. I mean, he took everything from this kid. Took his life, his future. He'll never go to college. He'll never have a career. He'll never have a wife, children, grandchildren. His whole life away. And I'm pro-life. I'm not for the death penalty. Okay, I'm a pro-life person, but I would give him life. Wouldn't you? All right, now I'm going to take a quick break. If you're on hold, hang in there. I'll take some calls when we get back. The number's toll free, 888-465-2631. 888-465-2631. We'll take a quick break and be right back. All right, and before we get back to it, I want to talk about Tom Laporta at Laporta Roofing. If you're in the state of Florida, like I am, listen up. This is hurricane season. Hurricane season, we're a week and a half into hurricane season. If you've got a wet spot on your ceiling, you've got a leak in your roof, and you don't want to go through hurricane season with a leak in your roof because those hurricane force winds or tropical storm force winds come through. That leaky roof is a loose shingle. It's a loose tile, and that's an entryway for those hurricane winds, those tropical storm winds into your home to rip your whole roof off during a storm. You don't want that to happen. Tom Laporte is a good MAGA guy. He'll never sell you a roof you do not need. If you just need a simple repair, he will do it. He covers both the east and west coast of Florida and everywhere in between. Call or text. This number rings directly to Tom Laporte's cell phone, 954-604-4602. 954-604-4602. And online, LaporteRoofing.com. All right, let's go to the phones. If you'd like to call in, the number is pinned in the live chat. You're on the air. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, this is Butch in New Jersey. How are you?
I'm doing all right, Butch.
Hey, I agree with what you said about, when we're wearing MAGA stuff, you can't be acting stupid. But I don't know if we want to kick those people out. You'd have to kick out 99% of the movement. I mean, the majority of the movement's pretty damn stupid, right?
I don't know what you're talking about. You got to be more specific. What movement and who's stupid?
MAGA people are stupid, just like you can't figure out the purpose of this call. You're stupid.
No, you think I don't know what you're all about? Don't think so much of yourself.
You are a stupid person.
Mm-hmm.
Quiet, piggy. That's still
yeah.
You don't mind me speaking that way, right? That's totally normal to speak to someone that way.
Are you okay?
You are a stupid person.
Uh-huh. So other than just parrot out of context things Trump says, do you have anything to say that's relevant to the conversation? Yeah, that's what I thought. Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness. What did I tell you? The left, they're unhinged. All right, so let's get back to it. Some more of this footage. And, I really worry for, the people that we're seeing out in front of the courthouse. I really worry about them and their families because the messaging, Nick Sorter was there, by the way. This next footage comes from Nick Sorter. The messaging that they're giving to young people, their children, their community, their students, is a message that gets people hurt and killed and in dangerous situations and escalates things that should never be escalated. Here's some of the footage out in front of the courthouse today. Nick Sorter reporting. And you look here, and I would really like to talk to these people. They're crying, they're upset. What are they? It's obviously an influencer because they have a camera with a tripod and everything. They got a microphone set up and all that stuff. So obviously some type of influencer. What is she crying about? What is the injustice? Right? Where is the injustice here? It's a clear-cut case. What happened? Number one, and the justice, the best justice that you can have, because you can't bring someone back from the dead, is that the murderer is going to go away for at least 20 years. I would give them life. I don't care what age they were when this happened. I would give them life. I wouldn't give them the death penalty. Again, I'm not in favor of the death penalty. But what is she upset about? That a murderer didn't get away with murder? Now, if the other kid would have had a weapon, if the other kid would have had a knife or some other weapon, or was using some type of life-threatening, deadly force, and things escalated to that, you'd have another story. But nothing like this happened. Even Carmelo Anthony himself told the police that he did it because he touched him, put his hands on him. Didn't say he threatened his life. Didn't say his life was in danger. Touched him. That's what he said to the police at the scene. Here's more footage live from the scene. Fox News.
make sure that things don't get out of control here. So that's really the mood out here. It's tense. These protesters on both sides, but definitely more Carmelo Anthony supporters. They're upset by this verdict, but the tension out here is something these deputies definitely prepared for, I can tell you. I mean, even the last few days, Will, I saw them kind of just driving around, roaming around the parking lot, just making sure.
Now here's another thing. Okay, this footage. Those of you that are watching on YouTube, by the way, the Brian Craig Show podcast is available wherever you get podcasts. Okay, just go to wherever you get podcasts, search for the Brian Craig Show. I'll come up. But if you want to catch the show live in video form, where you hear me taking calls, and not only can you see me and hear me, but you can also see the video and images I show. This is another thing, and this particular footage, I was lucky that I found this. Okay, because this is what the media do. Obviously, this is a controversial case. There are people that are African American that are very upset at the verdict. I don't understand it at all. I don't understand what they're upset about. I don't understand where their perception of an injustice is here in relation to Carmelo Anthony. It was not a case of self-defense, not at that level. He could have fought back with his hands. Maybe the police would have come. Maybe both boys would have been arrested and charged with assault. Maybe not. Maybe they would have been suspended from school because it was a school event. But that's not what he did. Took out a deadly weapon and killed the kid. They didn't even warn him. Didn't even say, hey, get back. He just did it. But I pulled this footage up because this is what the media do. Okay? And for those of you watching on YouTube, let me make it smaller so you can see it better. Okay? Okay. I'm going to blow it up again in a minute. But there's two shots of the same crowd. One is from a cameraman who has a camera and he's standing in front of the crowd. And the other one is the drone, is a drone shot up ahead. Look at these images. The cameraman that's on the ground is zoomed in and it looks like a massive crowd, maybe hundreds of people. But when you see it overhead, it's not that many people at all, is it? I mean, how many people are in this crowd? It's hard to count. 2 dozen, 3 dozen, 50 maybe. But there's a lot of them are cops over here. There's a lot of media. There's some influencers. But the actual crowd of protesters that are upset, that are screaming, where that idiot in his red, white, and blue American flag shirt's causing trouble, is maybe two dozen people to 50, but probably less than 50. Very few people, but the camera up close makes it look like a massive crowd, perhaps hundreds of people. And when this goes, this drone footage on the right, we're not supposed to see that. We're only supposed to see this. This is something the media have always done. And you rarely saw what you're looking at right now. The media make you think, they always do this, that little tiny groups are hundreds of people by the way they film. Okay? So this footage goes out live across the world. We're in an election year. There's primaries today in the United States. They show this close-up to make it look like it's hundreds of people when it's only a couple of dozen. That enrages people. That enrages people. And it spreads the falsehood that there's a racial injustice taking place and that many hundreds of people are there at the scene, at the courthouse, while the verdict's being read, who believe there's a racial injustice when it's just a handful of people. And of those handful of people out there, who are they? Friends, family? Did they go to school with them? Are they local activists, like the guy in the red, white, and blue shirt probably is? And usually when these things happen, you never see the second one. Now, I'm going to give credit to Fox News, okay? Because Fox News, they made a conscious decision to show a split screen showing everything. And you know what? I don't think it was an accident that Fox News showed it. Now, come to think of it, I think Fox News showed it this way on purpose to give perspective. I think this is an example of honest reporting from Fox News. Someone in the control room at Fox News, I guess this was probably in New York that handles this. Someone in the control room, an executive, a producer, a director, a news director, someone made a decision. Let's show the real crowd size, not it looking like hundreds of people, because they don't want to pour gasoline on a bonfire. They don't want to escalate something to another level and cause race riots. I've seen the media do this so many times over the years. They never stop doing things like this. This is just, it's what they do. And they'll continue to do it. Now, those of you on hold, stand by. All right. The number to call in is 888-465-2631. 888-465-2631. You know, Father's Day will be here before you know it. And I want to talk about Mike Lindell and My Pillow. Mike Lindell has an entire Father's Day section right at the front of his website. And I made this announcement this morning because this just dropped. These have been out of stock for a long time. The My Pillow bathrobes. They've been out of a lot of sizes and a lot of colors. They have all sizes and all colors are now in. And by the way, they're not just available in men's, they're available in women's as well. Okay? These are great Father's Day gifts. There's not a MAGA dad out there that would not love a bathrobe. I have a My Pillow bathrobe. My wife has a My Pillow bathrobe. Like everything Mike Lindell makes, it's a very, very high quality. And there's a great deal going on right now. With my promo code Kane at checkout, Kane, you can get the My Pillow bathrobes for $100 off. You heard me, $100 off. Normally $179.98, but right now, just $79.98, $100 off with my promo code Kane at checkout. So do your Father's Day shopping at mypillow.com with my promo code Kane, Kane, at checkout. You can also order by phone toll-free, 1-800-716-4879. 1-800-716-4879. Promo code Kane, Kane. We'll take a quick break and be right back.
What if a world-famous wine empire was hiding a deadly secret? From author Malenko Gabrillo comes an international thriller where luxury, power, and organized crime collide in a battle that spans the continents in Blood and Wine. In Blood and Wine, meet the Lombardi family. They've spent generations building a global empire of Michelin-starred restaurants and world-renowned wines. But when their daughter suddenly vanishes, they uncover a criminal network operating in the shadows of the luxury industry. As shocking secrets emerge and the stakes rise higher than ever imagined, the family finds itself caught in a dangerous struggle involving betrayal, power, and a ruthless cartel determined to take everything they've built from New York to Europe and beyond. Blood and Wine combines cinematic action, unforgettable characters, and non-stop suspense in a story about family, legacy, and the price of survival. Order your copy of Blood and Wine from author Malenko Gabrillo online at iTheBook.com. That's iTheBook.com. Do you love television? Ever wonder what's really happening behind the scenes of your favorite shows? Then you need to add TV Insiders, the TV Pro Review podcast, to your Spotify playlist. TV Insiders covers the world of television from two industry professionals, Tim and Joe, who know the business from the inside out. Each week, TV Insiders discusses some of the biggest shows across streaming, as well as network TV, delivering sharp analysis, honest opinions, and insider perspectives you won't find anywhere else. From race across the world and Temptation Island, celebrity sabotage, and more. Every episode of TV Insiders explores what works, what doesn't, and what audiences are being told. Plus, you'll get the latest TV industry news, behind-the-scenes stories, production insights, and discussions about the trends shaping the future of TV. Share the podcast on all your social media so your friends can tune in too. TV Insiders, the TV Pro Review podcast on Spotify. Start listening right now.
All right. We're back. I'm Brian Craig. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Okay, so we're talking about Carmelo Anthony, and out of all of the cases, and I have followed over the years a lot of these racial cases since I've been in broadcasting, right? And Rodney King to now, and everything in between. And Rodney King, that happened when I was new on the air, and and the video and everything else. Out of all of the racially charged incidents, based on the information we knew, the Carmelo Anthony case, without question in my mind, is the most clear-cut case. There's no race involved. Now, there's some race hustlers coming out of the woodwork, no doubt about it. But with the incident, there's no race involved, and it's a clear-cut case of cold-blooded murder. There's no debate. Like with George Floyd, right? We didn't see the beginning of the incident. We didn't see the spark. We saw, but you look at the original video without context, and you're like, hey, what happened here? And you find out more as time goes on, and it changes your opinion and perspective, but you understand what I mean. Exactly. So look at this. There's a crowdfunding campaign going on. They're trying to raise the goal is a very strange amount. I don't know why it's this odd amount, but the goal is $1,396,000. Is it $1,396,725? Why such an odd amount? $1,396,725. Is there some significance to this number? Or is there somebody that wants to buy something that costs exactly that? I mean, isn't that an odd number? Why don't they just say even 1.4 million would be, And why is the goal so high? What's that all about? Isn't that strange? They've raised $617,142.01 as of now. But what a strange number. Now, this gentleman here, he had a bit of a little press event. And they say that he is one of the founders of the crowdfunding campaign. I don't know. Let's hear what he has to say, though. What should Black America be upset about? I mean, does this guy think that Carmelo Anthony should have gotten away with murder? Standing your ground in deadly force is only permitted as a defense if your life is truly in jeopardy and you have no way of escape. Okay? That's it. And Carmelo Anthony at no point was ever at risk. So I don't understand what he thinks Black America should be worried about here. Maybe they should be worried about people like him that are giving them a lot of bad information and making them think that there's been some injustice. Now, we got another perspective of the crowd. Now, remember, I was showing you in the last segment how small the crowd really is. Look at this. How much of that crowd that's so small are media people and influencers? What's an advocacy leader? What is an advocacy leader? That's a new title. Have you guys heard that title? The Next Generation Action Network. Oh my goodness, this is a wannabe Jesse Jackson, a wannabe Al Sharpton. The National Action Network, right?
it lets us know that we are not going to be afforded the same laws as anybody else. And I give a damn about nobody that feels like I'm playing the race card here. For 400 years, our people have been at the liberty and had to suffer at the liberty of these laws.
Okay, first off, I just want to say, this knee-jerk 400 years. I'm sure that you've noticed that the United States is about to celebrate our 250th anniversary. The country is not 400 years old. Okay, so the things before 250 years ago have nothing to do with the United States. Okay, so this 400 years has nothing to do with us. The slavery in this country, which of course he's referencing and such. A couple things about that. The United States did not bring slavery to the New World. The Europeans did. We ended it in the New World. And yeah, that's right. In the Civil War, or as I call it, the Democrat insurrection against the federal government. 1 million Americans died in the Civil War, the war to free the slaves. And before that, for decades and decades, there were all kinds of conflicts in this country, many of them deadly, all over the question of slavery. We ended all of it. We didn't start it, we ended it. And many have died of all skin colors. Americans have died to end all of these injustices that we did not bring here. They were brought here by the Europeans, maintained by the Democrats. That's why they led the insurrection of the Civil War, the Democrats. And a lot of Americans died. 1 million in the Civil War alone, many before, many after. And I think the price has been paid for these things that we didn't even start. This guy, he's not a good guy. He's a bad guy. And he obviously is looking to make some money out of this. You're on the air. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Brian, it's Dog49 out of California.
Yes.
So first of all, this is a incredibly sad event that obviously could have been prevented.
Mm-hmm.
I have heard some extraordinarily disgusting things coming from individuals who are Black, saying that he didn't really push the knife in, or that the young man that passed away fell on the knife. All of these things are absolutely ridiculous.
Well, even if that were true, okay, even if he fell on the knife, it doesn't mean Carmelo Anthony doesn't go to jail because he brought the knife.
I completely agree with what.
Yeah.
That's exactly the point. This is a completely unfortunate event. A young man ended up losing his life, and another young man, because of poor decision making, is going to end up having a large portion of his life absolutely destroyed. No matter what color anyone is, those are the facts. Poor decision making and taking accountability for your decisions needs to be prominent, especially when it comes to an event like this where there is a life that is lost. Unfortunately, people are so blind that they can't see anything except race, because obviously they don't like the decision, and so they have to rationalize it through.
Well, I'll tell you, I feel sorry for Carmelo Anthony too. The Carmelo Anthony got himself in the position he got himself in because of people like this jerk that I just played. A young man who's been brainwashed in some type of bizarro alt universe that led to him putting things in place that resulted in a murder and him going to prison. And this kind of behavior that came out of this guy's mouth is going to create more Carmelo Anthonys.
That is like a Timu Al Sharpton, to be completely honest.
Timu Al Sharpton, exactly.
And in regards to the process that he keeps talking about, he has a shady past. He knows exactly what the process is like because he's been involved in being the subject of part of that process.
Yes.
First of all, Carmelo Anthony was not a typical. He came from a very affluent community, from a very affluent family.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, he ended up getting himself involved, influenced by rap music, this, that, and the other. He ended up making some very, very poor decisions. Why do you bring a knife to a track meet? There really isn't any reason.
There's no
for that,
reason to.
okay,
There's
at
no
all.
reason whatsoever. None.
Exactly. And if you're going to, and you cannot rationalize in any way, shape, or form the murdering of another individual. And to even think that you can, it's absolutely
well.
ridiculous.
And if you notice, the
And
one thing that I've been looking for, I haven't talked about this at all. Hey, by the way, I appreciate the call. I'm running short on time, but you make some good points. All right, you take it. The rest of you on hold, hang in there for a minute. I haven't talked about this. I don't think I've talked about this at all since it's happened. This might be the first time. And one of the reasons I haven't is because we really didn't have a complete picture of what happened until the trial and the witnesses got there. Everything was kind of, we heard a lot of these things, but we didn't really get a clear-cut explanation as to what happened until the trial happened. And when you look at all the testimony, even by the defense, clear-cut, no question. All right, let's go. You're on the air. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Yeah, it's Renee from Harlem. I had to interrupt.
Well, no. I'm glad you called, Renee. I'm going to give you. I really want to have a real conversation with you. Can you forget about your rhetoric and this act that you do? Because I think. Hey, hold on. I think you could add something important to the conversation. Okay.
Interrupted.
No, excuse me. I want to have a real conversation with you. I'm going to give it a go, and if it doesn't work, I'm just going to end the conversation. But obviously there are people that are African American that look at what happened there and see it differently than how the jury saw it, right? So what are we missing? Why did Carmelo Anthony bring a deadly weapon to a track meet for high schools and high school students? What would be the reasoning for that?
Probably because of people like Chud the Builder and people like you.
Chud the Builder? I don't even know who that is. No, come on. Be serious.
You have no idea who that is.
No.
Wow.
No.
Yeah.
No.
How convenient.
So why would a high school kid bring a knife to a track meet? I'm asking you. You have no explanation? No, you have no explanation. All right, I would thank you for the call, but if I did, I'd be lying. What Renee from Harlem was doing is, that's a simple question, and there's no answer to it that would make Carmelo Anthony look like anything other than what he is, what the jury says, a murderer. If it was scissors, I have to put tape, on for the running, so I had to bring scissors to cut the bandages that I have for the tape or something. Well, but it wasn't scissors. It was a knife. There's no explanation to that. Zero explanation to that, unless you're looking to cause trouble. If you'd like to support my channel and my content, become a Patreon supporter. There's a link in the description of this episode on whatever platform you're listening on to my Patreon page. And if you become a Patreon supporter, you get access to a lot of exclusive content, including my Patreon-only live streams, which I do every day. It's a live stream much like here on YouTube. It's on the Patreon platform. It's a troll-free zone. Trolls are not welcome or allowed. And there's a chat room there. And on the live streams on Patreon, I talk about things that I cannot talk about here or anywhere else. You'll hear me talk about a lot of things that I cannot talk about here in ways that I cannot talk about here. So when you become a Patreon supporter, not only do you get access to the Patreon-only live streams, okay, and the other content that I have for Patreon supporters, you get access to all the back catalog of everything else that's been up there. And there's a very large back catalog of exclusive material. So when you go there and click the link, it's in the description, you'll see an option that says join for free. If you join for free, you don't have access to any of the content. You don't even see it. You have to be a paying Patreon member to have access to the content. And that starts at just $5 a month. And you get access to all of that. And I did a live stream just a few hours ago this afternoon. And I do them every day. Sometimes I do them early in the morning before I go on the air. Sometimes I do them right after I get on. I do them randomly, random times. talking about things I cannot talk about here, and I do them every day. So check that out. If you become a top Patreon supporter, you get your name up on the screen here on YouTube, and you get a live on-air thank you shout-out on every episode. So the names you'll hear now are my top Patreon supporters. I want to thank SFjr, Christine, Chuck, Pamela, Nick, Wesley, Doris, Heather, David, Maria in Texas, Alice, LeeZep, Shawna, George, Brandon, John, Frank, Dale, Tina, David, Laura, Rob, Wes, Sue, Janice, Teresa, Irene, Rick, and Michael. These are my top Patreon supporters. Thank you all. And again, if you'd like to become a Patreon supporter, there's a link in the description of the episode, okay? I just want to mention with the last caller, that's really sad because obviously the people out there on the scene that are on the ground crying that I was showing, they see things differently than I see them and that I think you see them with the Carmelo Anthony case. I don't agree with it. There's only one view here on this. I don't think there's any two sides to this, okay, at all. I think it's pretty cut and dry. But I am so interested to understand what they're seeing that I don't see. And I was really hoping Renee from Harlem would be able to share that. But obviously he couldn't because he's coherent enough to understand that there is no argument to bring that knife. You know, what I'm thinking about, even when I was in elementary school, you know, when I first moved to Florida, I was young. I was in the 5th grade when I first moved to Florida. And from that point on, when I lived in Ohio, it wasn't as outdoorsy as a community as Florida. Every guy I knew, all of us, had pocket knives. Some of us even had knives where we could clean fish or fillet fish from elementary school through high school, all kinds of things. We never brought them to school. When we were driving, we didn't have them in our cars because they were forbidden. A knife at any school event was known to be, or any other weapon for that matter, automatic expulsion, not suspension, expulsion. Everyone knows this. Why would anyone bring a knife to a high school track meet? Someone who's looking for trouble. That's who. You're on the air. What's your name? Where are you calling from? Okay, whatever that was. The rest of you on hold, hey, listen, hang in there. I'll be back in about 12 hours on the morning show, okay? So if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe. And everyone, before you go, please like the video. Liking the video is what gets the video recommended to people that have not yet found my channel. So please don't go without liking the video. Those of you that are new, welcome to my channel. My name is Brian Craig. This is where MAGA comes to talk. I live stream, taking live calls every day. I'm live every weekday morning and weekend morning. And I'm in the afternoons too during the week. So make sure you subscribe, and you'll enjoy this show, I promise you. And all political viewpoints are welcome. Okay, you don't have to agree with me to call in. You can I enjoy talking to people who disagree and challenge my opinions, and we can have real discussions. Okay, thanks for tuning in, everyone. I'll see you first thing bright and early tomorrow morning. Take care.